Welcome to our In Perspective series, where we provide an in-depth look at the prevailing challenges we are facing today. I'm your host, Beth Goldsmith, Chair of the Board of the Associated, and I'm delighted that you're joining me. Throughout this year, we have been speaking with local and national experts about the global issues facing our world, from the climate change crisis to the war in Ukraine. During these intimate conversations, we've looked at how the Associated and its network of agencies, thanks to the support of the annual campaign, is getting ahead of the curve to address the issues in innovative and forward-thinking ways. Before we begin today, I want to take a moment to remember the 19 children and 2 teachers who were killed in Uvalde, Texas. The terrible tragedy of gun violence, coupled with bigotry, hatred, and rage, is unfolding throughout the country and in our own backyard. As we mourn the innocent lives lost in Uvalde, we also remember all the victims of senseless violence in Baltimore, Buffalo, and throughout the country. Today, we're going to focus closer to home at the work being done in Baltimore City. This year, in response to the 2020 census, the city is about to embark on its first comprehensive master plan since 2006. The plan, which will engage local voices, will help guide equitable neighborhood development and address how we can make Baltimore an inviting place to live. Here to start the conversation is Sara Paranilam, Division Chief, Policy and Data Analysis at the Baltimore City Department of Planning. Following our conversation with Sara, we'll hear from 2 of our agencies, CHI, which is working extensively in Central Park Heights, and the Jewish Museum of Maryland, which is working in Jonestown. And we'll learn about the work being done in several city communities. I want to remind everyone to submit any questions you have for our guests through the Zoom chat. We will have time to address a few questions toward the end of the program. Sara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to delve right into it.
Okay.
What are the mission and goals of the comprehensive planning process, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan is a process that we go through every 10 years. It is a requirement of the state. So jurisdictions across the state are undertaking this process, and we're really trying to lay out what the future should look like for Baltimore, and really focusing on the physical development of Baltimore to provide a roadmap for developers, for neighborhoods, for city agencies as to what the future will look like. So we're exploring the places and spaces in Baltimore and how they should look. And what people's perspectives are for the future. So we're looking at livable places, we're looking at inclusive economy, we're looking at harmony with nature, and we're looking at healthy communities. We've identified some themes that we're exploring and are at the process now of looking at what topics we should look at in depth.
Sounds very, very ambitious, I will say. And I understand this is building on the mayor's action plan. Can you talk a little bit about what's in that?
Yeah, so the mayor's action plan is focused around 5 pillars. So there is a pillar that looks at public safety, there's a pillar that looks at youth, and as you mentioned in the intro, there's one that looks at equitable neighborhood development. And so we're really focusing on equitable neighborhood development and building from the mayor's action plan, which is looking at his first term. We're looking at a longer timeline. So we're looking at 10 years and beyond, and really how can we guide equitable neighborhood development, engaging people in a conversation about first, what does it even mean? So what does equitable neighborhood development mean? What are the building blocks for equitable neighborhood development, and how can we achieve it? What do people want to see? So I think we know instinctively when something's not equitable, but how do you know when we are making progress towards something that is equitable? And so that's what we're looking at through this planning process.
It certainly makes sense. I know that's a hard distinction sometimes. I have a long question, so I'm going to read it. Although the last comprehensive planning process was completed in 2006, the city has still worked with a number of neighborhoods over the years in the planning process. We're going to be speaking a little later with 2 individuals who work in Central Park Heights and Jonestown. So I'm going to ask you to give us a quick overview of how you've worked in those communities.
Yeah, so the planning department, this planning process is citywide, but we have been working and will continue to work on plans at lots of other scales. So we've been working with agencies on plans, we work with neighborhoods on plans, we've done neighborhood plans in both of those areas. So I had the opportunity, I was the planner in Northwest for many years before taking on this role. I had the opportunity to work on the Park Heights Master Plan, to work on the Northwest Community Planning Forum plan that supports the neighborhoods of Glen, Falstaff, Cheswold, Cross Country, and Mount Washington, and we did an update to that plan. And then annually, the planning department works on a spending plan for Pimlico Local Impact Aid. So we engage all of the residents in that area on a plan for those areas as well.
It's great to hear, and I'm sure you guys will all want to talk when you're finished today. How can residents get involved with Our Baltimore?
Yep, we have a website, planourbaltimore.com. So if people haven't had a chance, you should definitely check that out. There's an engagement page, and there's lots of different opportunities listed there. So we have open houses that we've been conducting. If I can do a little plug, our next open house is June 15th at the Hone & Company Lithograph Building at 2101 East Biddle Street. It's open house style, so you can come at any time between 6 and 8 p.m. And there's an opportunity to engage with staff. We also have storytelling initiatives, meeting in a box opportunities, lots of different opportunities. There's an online survey. So check out the engagement page on planourbaltimore.com for lots of ways to participate.
Great. Well, lots of information there. Thank you so very much. For many years, Jewish Baltimore has worked with partners to foster safe and healthy neighborhoods throughout Baltimore, including Reservoir Hill, Central Park Heights, and Jonestown. With the work of synagogues and other area organizations, Baltimore's Jews have a long legacy of being part of the work in neighborhoods and helping to create vibrant communities. For today's focus, we're going to dive deeper into the work of two associated agencies, Chai and the Jewish Museum of Maryland. I recently had the privilege of learning about their efforts in Central Park Heights and Jonestown. Take a look. We're here today with Lisa Budlow, CEO of Chai, and we're going to be touring some of Chai's projects. Talk to us about your work.
We're here at Renaissance Gardens. This is an affordable senior housing. It's a community for about 60 older adults who can live here safely and affordably. It's really kind of holistically how the seniors here age in place. Chai works in sort of two kind of main buckets, housing development and community building. So, this is a great example of housing development. We've got a portfolio of multifamily housing that stretches from here, Renaissance Gardens, out to Weinberg Villages in Owings Mills. We work in partnership, especially here in Central Park Heights, with a really connected group of community organizations, and we are pulled together through the Northwest Baltimore Partnership.
Now you've brought me to the site of what will soon be Woodland Gardens 1 and 2, I believe.
Here we are going to build two buildings side by side, a senior building that will have 75 units of affordable senior housing, and a family property that will have 63 units. And all back here where you see just kind of vacant land right now will be a community garden and play space. And the ultimate effect will be a vibrant intergenerational community right here in the heart of Park Heights.
Let's walk over to your offices. Thanks for bringing me inside, Lisa. Tell me about some of the other stuff that Chai is doing.
Yeah, so the map really shows where we were. We were here in Central Park Heights. We came up Park Heights Avenue, and this bordered area up here is what Chai calls our general service area, or our GSA. The agency does schools work with 10 schools. 2 are in the city, and 8 are in the county in Pikesville. We are engaged very heavily with the neighborhood associations and active neighbors who are interested in strengthening their neighborhoods in various ways.
Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for showing me around today and giving me a real taste of what Chai is all about.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And now, let's go visit another neighborhood that the Associated and its agencies are very involved in. We are here in East Baltimore in Jonestown at the Jewish Museum of Maryland's campus. And I'm here talking with Sal Davis, our new executive director.
That's a pretty large campus. It goes from 5 Lloyd, which is this building right here. We're currently leasing that to Helping Up Mission. Lloyd Street Synagogue, of course, as the anchor building here. Then there's the Jewish Museum of Maryland in the middle, B'nai Israel on the other end of the block, and then around that corner down Lombard and towards Central is the old Lenny's Deli, which is part of our campus as well. There's the main Helping Up Mission kind of campus right over here to the left, and they're just either in the process of or maybe recently opened a women's unit. That'll be to our right as we hit Baltimore Street here. This is the original home of Baltimore's Jewish community, and taking care of the Lloyd Street Synagogue is a core part of our mission. So many of young Jewish people are living in Baltimore City. So we feel like that's a real opportunity to bring people back to the original center of Jewish life, build relationships with our neighbors in Jonestown today, but also do a lot of outreach to younger Jewish people in Baltimore City who may not have, a real connection to Jewish institutional life.
I know the museum has long been a place where city schools have brought students to learn. How is that program going now?
Bringing students through is key to the work, but it's a great moment for us to reconsider how we can support teachers, and we're asking them directly. And what we're hearing overwhelmingly is a call for professional development. So we're ramping up our professional development offerings, specifically around Holocaust education methodologies. And also a call for curricular resources that they can use in their classroom to teach the materials that we teach here around Holocaust history, immigration histories, and Baltimore's Jewish history.
It's really exciting to know we're back.
We are back.
I'm here now with Lisa Budlow, CEO of CHI, and Dr. Saul Davis, Executive Director of the Jewish Museum of Maryland. Both associated agencies collaborate extensively with nonprofits, government agencies, businesses, and more to advance community initiatives. Lisa, let me start the conversation with you. In the video, you mentioned the Northwest Baltimore Partnership. Can you tell me more about the organization, its goals, and how CHI is working in Central Park Heights?
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to talk about this work. It's really important to the agency. So the Northwest Baltimore Partnership was founded in 2018 through a collaboration among CHI, LifeBridge Health, and Park Heights Renaissance. And we very, very quickly got to work building that collaboration. We established a steering committee that consists now of 12 organizations. Some are governmental, some are community-based, and we focus on building value from Park Circle to Pikesville. There are multiple other committees. There is a partners committee, which has about 24 organizations. They're neighborhood associations, they're community-based organizations, and it's really the gateway into the partnership. It's an extremely inclusive organization. We've got lots of projects that are run through committees, home ownership committee. We've got our One Park Heights committee, which is focused on pulling together the communities all across that geography that I mentioned, so that neighborhood residents really engage with one another and really build a vision together of an entire One Park Heights community that's really aligned all across that geography. And we also recently did an oral history project, which was a really wonderful project, interviewing folks who had grown up in the various neighborhoods in Park Heights, included the mayor, included Senator Cardin, and lots of other folks, Delegate Rosenberg, and really showcase the deep, rich history of the area and part of what makes it so special in the city. I do also want to mention, in terms of showcasing the geography of the area, the state of Maryland is a really excellent partner with us, and they came down for a tour just yesterday. And so we were able to really showcase some of what we're working on in Pikesville. We looked at the Armory, we looked at Woodland Gardens, which is a project that CHI is working on. We went to Park West Health System, Edgecombe Park, so really spanned sort of the full geography, city, county, large projects, smaller projects, and showcased all of the really exciting initiatives that we're working on.
Really exciting initiatives, and so much, and such a vast thing. And one of the things we didn't get to talk about when we took our walk was Pimlico. So tell us about that, please, or at least a little, give us a little inkling of what's going on.
An inkling. Lots is going on in Pimlico. So we established when the law in 2020 was set up, we established a community compact. It is the purpose of it is representation for neighborhood associations, so that while the racetrack is being renovated, the concerns and hopes and dreams and vision of the community is incorporated all at the same time. We meet monthly. It is really functional. They elected a chair and a vice chair, and recently, you've probably seen and heard in the news, the General Assembly actually this past session pushed forward the timetable of Pimlico, decoupled it with Laurel, and when that was happening, the Maryland Stadium Authority, who's really in charge of the development, reached out to the chair and vice chair. So that is really a community organizing success that is lifting up the voices of the neighborhood representatives to really make them a key part of the process. So it's exciting. Work should start right after the next Preakness, and they're thinking a few years, and maybe by Preakness 2026, it could be complete, and it's going to be a beautiful space and renovation, and really a community benefit.
So it's so exciting, and the long-term planning is, I'm sure, very exciting for everyone to hear. How else is Chai strengthening the fabric of the community, and maybe some lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chai, as you know, has been working in Northwest for almost 40 years. We work in the city and the county, and really very geographically focused in Northwest, really as a result, as you mentioned before, of the Jewish community's historic ties to this area. And we really lean into the relational aspects of the work that we do. It is not transactional. It is not, that we've created a service that people can access. It really is. We go out into the community. We are working side by side with neighborhood leaders. We are co-creating what we do together. It's quite collaborative. And that is the way in which we know we can sort of pivot to what matters to the community and really lift up what they are really focusing on. And I will say that, in the vein of this being really, truly relational work, we are doing work around pulling people together and having real conversation, about the deep history and what that looks like and what that means to the present. And we're doing kind of a asset-based and wraparound kind of look at the neighborhood, and focusing on schools and on various groups that are doing maybe a spruce up or a cleanup, and all those kinds of actions that we can take together that really kind of pull neighborhood residents together to work toward common goals.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thanks so much. I've seen Sal nodding his head. I know what Lisa's saying is resonating with you as well, Sal, and welcome. Since the Jonestown Visioning Plan launched in 2015, a lot has obviously happened in that community. So tell us how the museum is working with your partners in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And I was nodding in affirmation and just, a lot of resonance with what Lisa just said, in particular, the relational piece of the work, which is something I want to highlight here. Some people might ask why it's not a traditional role of a museum to be active in its neighborhood or the neighborhood development. And when I arrived here about 1.5 years ago, the Jonestown Plan was such an educational document for me, and I went back to it recently, and now that I've experienced the neighborhood, to refer back to that document, it's informational, it's also inspirational, and I want to acknowledge my predecessor in the work, Marvin Pinkert, who was a leader in that effort. And it was one of the things that really drew me to this museum, is that it's taking a lead in the work that's happening in the neighborhood, building those relationships. And when I looked at the priority list on that plan, at the top was an ethics of care. And that was in 2015, and through the pandemic, care has really become, it's come to the fore, and we're trying to run the museum through that sort of logic of care. Also historic preservation, heritage, commitment to culture, the immigrant history of the neighborhood. So all of those pieces really resonate. But I think a theme of what I'll have to say today is really about building relationships. So much has changed since 2015. There's a lot of change in the neighborhood and also the people who are in the neighborhood. Organizationally, the museum has very close relationships with some of those organizations we looked at when we were walking through the neighborhood, Helping Up Mission, Ronald McDonald House, the McKim Center. Those are really on the block with us. So continuing to build those relationships as there's transitions within the personnel working there, because in order to advance the work, we have to build the trust through those relationships.
Yeah, exactly the theme that you were talking about in terms of the community partnerships. Give us a little, we talked all the way about 2026, I believe, the Preakness then. So tell us your vision for the next 5 to 10 years with the museum and the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Well, we have a capital project aspiration at the museum, and in all of the considerations for that project, we're thinking about the museum as a key institution within Jonestown. So how do all of the decisions we make along the project of capital expansion, how do they add to the value of the neighborhood? So we're looking a lot also through the pandemic on ways of how do we activate the exterior of the campus? And as we do that activation and sort of change the visual landscape of the museum and the neighborhood, we want to do that in dialogue with partners in the neighborhood. And another key piece of it, I would say, is to build relations with the residents. So the very strong relationships exist with organizations across the neighborhood. On the other end of the neighborhood is the Lewis Museum. It's something else I wanted to make sure and say today, is that Jonestown is bracketed by the African American Museum of Maryland and the Jewish Museum of Maryland. That's a great asset and tremendous value potential in that relationship as well. So to continue to nurture those relationships and continue to consider the impact of the entire neighborhood in the decisions we make at the museum.
I'm going to come back to you in a second. I want to go back to Lisa for one moment because we just got an audience question for you, which is, could you expand on some of the benefits to the community from the renovations at Pimlico?
Absolutely. I mentioned that the Pimlico Compact Committee meets monthly. We actually had our meeting last night, and we were doing a visioning process. So the racetrack development, the very first thing that is going to happen is the track is going to be rotated. And the reason that's happening is to create parcels around the track for development. And so that is really a key element to what the neighborhood residents are really kind of focusing on. What do we want to see in those development parcels? And it's not aspirational. It is really tactical. And we've got the Stadium Authority, as I mentioned, Baltimore Development Corporation, the Planning Commission was on the call with us last night, really talking about how we kind of pull this vision. So, do we want a grocery store? Do we want a hotel? We were talking about, some folks have gone to other cities and to see what is, working in other places. And, there's some cities that have maybe sort of a seasonal amenity. It might be like an ice rink, and then it turns into like a water park or those kinds of things. And those are all real conversations that we are having. And the idea is that the track, because as we know, the Preakness is once a year. There's a little bit of racing that happens that week. It's going to be a beautiful property, and we want to make sure that it is a place that residents are able to access and really to enhance their lives. And I'll just say one more thing about that, which is a piece of our compact document talks about then going beyond the property itself, even beyond the oval and beyond the out parcels, and looking at how that investment in that property can really lift up the neighborhood across all of the neighborhood. So infrastructure, lighting, all kinds of sort of green space. That's all. Those are all elements that we can expect as we watch this progress.
It's very exciting, something I'm certainly looking forward to being able to enjoy as well. Sal, I want to get back to you and talk a little bit about going beyond brick and mortar, which we know is certainly part of the plan. The museum is working with schools to build respect and understanding about diverse populations. Tell us about how critical this is to your thoughts and to your work.
Sure, the education work is central to the work of the museum. Also, historically museums weren't doing that work of education. This is sort of a something that's developed over the last 25 years, that education programs have become sort of, part of a museum and then really core to the work. And in terms of the Jewish Museum, we have 3 pillars of our education program that's teaching about the history of Jews in the state of Maryland, teaching about immigration history, specifically Jewish immigration, but how it relates to other immigrations into Maryland, and also Holocaust education. And one of the recent developments is thinking about anti-Semitism and helping young people in the city understand that ideology, how it manifests and changes, how it adapts, and how it's, Holocaust education is a vital piece of our work, but also understanding that anti-Semitism didn't end in 1945, and I think it's a really critical piece of our work through all 3 of those pillars that I just mentioned, that we draw that through line of anti-Semitism historically and its contemporary manifestations into the delivery of our program into schools, and not just to help students understand about anti-Semitism, but also to truly understand about Jewish lived experience and culture and the diversity and richness of Jewish life in the present.
So relevant to everyone, so thank you. I have another audience question, and this is about the Pikesville Armory project, so obviously it's for you. Is Chai involved in that, and if so, how?
So the Pikesville Armory project has really gained some steam recently. There is a foundation that is lifting up the plans, and we do have a representative that sits on that board. We also, through the Northwest Partnership, it's in addition to all of the collaboration that I mentioned, it is a vehicle for bringing in capital dollars into the Northwest area. And so the Armory is going to be looking to partner with the Northwest Partnership to look to access some of those capital dollars to support the planning that they are doing. And it is really exciting. We walked the property. I'm actually native Baltimorean. I'd never been on that property. It's vast, and it really has incredible potential, and could be a really important development for Pikesville to create a neighborhood amenity, an asset, community space and green space, and really kind of springboard to additional development that could happen in Pikesville as well. It's very exciting.
It is. All of this has been very, very exciting. I don't think I have another question at the moment from the audience, so I'm going to turn back, though. Sal, I had the absolute privilege last night of attending the annual meeting of the Jewish Museum, and I'd love for you to just take a moment to talk a little bit more about what that was like, what's going on there right now for everyone, and maybe even talk about the latest exhibit. Share with our audience, please.
Absolutely, thank you. Thanks for joining us last night. It really marked the turn toward hybrid programming, which I think is here to stay. We're doing it right now as I say this. People in the room with us, as well as delivering the content out in virtually. So it was that moment. It was also really a coalescing moment, I think, for our staff. We have a lot of new members of our team coming from different fields, including video production, public radio, theater, and all of that really came together very nicely last night. Music, you got a little bit of live music in the mix as well, a lot of musical talent on the staff. So it was just a way to showcase the talents of our staff and also introduce the community to our team and sort of new directions the museum is taking. And we really highlighted 2 of the big exhibits that we've done in the last year. One is A Fence Around the Torah, which is about safety and unsafety in Jewish life. It was a contemporary Jewish art exhibit that was pretty dynamic and is ongoing in terms of virtual opportunities to experience that exhibit. And also Blacklist, the Hollywood Red Scare, which the museum is borrowing from the Jewish Museum Milwaukee and is on display currently and through October.
Yes, fabulous. I do want to emphasize the ability to share with our audience the ability to actually come to the museum virtually if people are not comfortable coming, in person. Anything you want to add that we haven't touched on?
I think I'd like to just kind of go back to that role of partnership and how we are talking about all of these really exciting developments and how none of it happens within kind of one organization, that it really is so important to collaborate. And you were mentioning before when you were talking with Sal about organizations and residents, and so that is so key, to have partners that can move the work forward and to be in touch with neighborhood residents who have hopes and dreams and concerns. And how critical that is, and I'll say here as we're sitting in the Associated, just the value of partnering with the Associated and sister agencies, and really to be able to represent the Jewish community, working side by side with partners in the general community and bringing service to the general community. It's really an honor to be able to do that work.
Thank you. And Sal, I know you would, again, that would resonate with you in talking about the neighborhoods. You want to speak a little to that? I know you have actually sort of organized some local, I say local to your location, other organizations that you're partnering with and using your place as a hub.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I want to say is, well, I kind of want to go back to something I heard Sara say earlier about the Baltimore City planning process and safety as one of the core pillars there. I just mentioned A Fence Around the Torah, and I would be remiss not to say afencearoundthetorah.com is the virtual gallery where people can still experience that amazing collection of Jewish contemporary art, and it's about safety and unsafety in Jewish life, and really tying that back to the Jonestown plan with this ethics of care. It's all kind of wrapped together, and then to tie it in with Lisa's emphasis on relationship building, that's one of the highlights of the annual meeting last night, for me, was to hear Doug Handy, who heads up the Baltimore County Public Schools Equity and Cultural Proficiency Department, talk about how the visit to that exhibit really impacted his staff and his work. So it's a great asset for the Jewish community to explore safety in a very dynamic way. And also, I think it's a resource. Clearly, the Baltimore County Public Schools were using that website as well as a framework to explore safety and care in deep ways.
And someone did just, I guess you triggered someone's curiosity here. Someone in the audience asked to describe the relationship with the schools and the important role they play.
Sure. Well, that relationship is changing. Education and museum work are changing dramatically through this pandemic, and we're trying to stay in dialogue with the schools. So we sent out a survey to the hundreds, I think actually thousands of teachers that the museum is in contact with, to ask them directly, how can we best support you through this time? And what we received back overwhelmingly was a call for more professional development opportunities, so we're really investing there. And also to be able to provide more curricular resources, so investing in the development of curricular resources. We just worked with 2 teacher fellows from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum to develop 6 new lesson plans that we want to roll out across the state to help teachers effectively teach about that history. And additionally, we did constitute an education committee at the museum this last year, which has been a longstanding aspiration at the museum. And Jill Max, who's a member of our board of directors, is chairing up that effort.
Well, fabulous. Thank you both so much. I want to thank all of our panelists today, and thanks to all of you for sitting in on this call. For those of you interested in learning how you can be involved in the Baltimore City planning process, just go to planourbaltimore.com and join us for the Associated's annual meeting on June 22nd at 5:30 p.m. as we reflect on this past year and celebrate our accomplishments. Go to associated.org/annual meeting. And finally, I want to remind everyone about the importance of our annual campaign and how every donation helps. To give, go to associated.org/give or call 410-369-9300. Thanks again for joining us, and please stay well.